Have you ever been binge watching a show and thought, wait, is America really like this? That's exactly what we're going to get into. We're going to peel back the curtain and see what's real and what's just Hollywood.
You know, it's easy to forget that Hollywood is one of America's biggest exports. It's not just selling movies, it's selling this whole idea of what America is. And hey, if that's all you ever saw, you'd probably think every single American has a giant rent-controlled apartment in New York and just hangs out at a coffee shop all day long.
So, that's the big question, right? How much of it is real? Here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we're going to look at the classic characters Hollywood just loves to use. Then we'll do a little reality check, see how it all stacks up against the facts. And, you might be surprised, we'll even find some things they actually get spot on. All right, let's dive into Hollywood's playbook. You'll see that American TV and movies tend to lean on a few classic character types. And trust me, you've seen these a million times. Each one is kind of designed to sell a specific idea about American culture. Okay, first you've got the hero. Think about it, the maverick cop, the brilliant but troubled detective, even the superhero. What do they all have in common? They're almost always this rugged individual. This is Hollywood's love letter to the idea of the lone wolf, right? The person who trusts their gut, breaks all the rules, and ends up being right, proving that one person can be smarter and more moral than the entire system.
And then, of course, there's what I call the friends dynamic. You know the one? This tight-knit group of pals, the found family, who somehow have all the time in the world to just hang out. But the key thing? Everyone, and I mean everyone, has a perfectly witty, clever comeback ready to go at a moment's notice. It's like their entire world runs on non-stop banter.
Hollywood also has this major obsession with high school. It's always this intense social battlefield, right? With these super clear-cut groups, the jocks, the nerds, the prom queens. It's the perfect little arena to play out a huge American value, competition, all in a place that pretty much everyone can relate to.
And last but not least, we've got a family dynamic I guarantee you've seen. From Homer Simpson to Phil Dunphy in Modern Family, the dad is this lovable, well-meaning, but kind of clueless guy who would probably burn the house down without supervision. And the mom? She's the super capable one, the one who's actually running the whole show and keeping everyone in line.
Okay, so those are the big archetypes. We see them everywhere. But the real question is, how true are they? Let's do a reality check and see where the fiction ends and the facts begin. Let's kick things off with the most glaringly obvious one, apartments. I mean, come on. The Friends apartment in the middle of Manhattan? That place would cost an absolute fortune. In reality, what do most young Americans actually have? Probably 3 roommates crammed into a space a quarter of that size. That on-screen lifestyle is, let's be honest, pure fantasy.
And that gap between fiction and reality goes way beyond just real estate. Hollywood shows you a life of nonstop parties and social gatherings. The reality? Americans work some of the longest hours and take way fewer vacations than people in most other developed countries. On TV, every argument is this big, loud, dramatic thing that gets wrapped up neatly in about 22 minutes. Real life? Still full of all the awkwardness and social anxiety that everyone else deals with. And that perfect melting pot friend group? While America is definitely diverse, a lot of social circles and even whole neighborhoods are still pretty homogeneous.
But hold on, it's not all made up. You know, like any good caricature, there are some real nuggets of truth buried in there. So let's flip the script. What does Hollywood actually get right about American culture?
Well, there are 3 things that are surprisingly accurate. First up is the optimism. That can-do attitude you see, that's totally real. There's a genuine belief that some crazy, out-there idea might just work. Second, the informality. It's actually pretty true that people might speak to their boss or a complete stranger in a really casual way. Those social barriers just seem a bit lower. And finally, that kind of surface-level friendliness. You know, the quick, how's it going, you give to a cashier or someone you pass on the street, that's a very real everyday thing.
Okay, but all of this, the good, the bad, the stereotypes, it all points to one really deep truth that Hollywood both shows us and helps create. I like to call it the main character mindset.
This idea is really rooted in something called American exceptionalism. It's this deep-seated feeling that your life is a movie, and, well, you're the star. It kind of makes sense when you think about it. The US is just so huge and geographically isolated that it's easy to start feeling like you're the center of the universe. I mean, just think about disaster movies. When they say the world is ending, who are they usually talking about? New York and LA, right?
But this whole focus on being the main character also shows us Hollywood's single biggest blind spot, pretty much the entire middle of the country. The stories are almost always set in New York or California.
But life in, say, Kansas or Ohio, where a massive number of Americans actually live, it gets completely ignored. And that life is often totally different, slower paced, more religious, and super community focused. It's basically a universe away from a show like Gossip Girl.
So in the end, the America that Hollywood sells us is this really potent mix of truth and total exaggeration. It definitely captures a certain kind of spirit, but it leaves out huge chunks of reality. And that leaves me with one last question for you to think about. When you're watching these shows with all these characters and their nonstop witty comebacks, do you actually find that entertaining? Or is it just kind of exhausting?